Hi there, welcome along to Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge. This is episode 5, part 2. Brian Deane, such a great and interesting story to tell that yes, for the first time we've split one of our pods into 2 parts. Hopefully you've already availed yourself of what's gone on in part 1. Loads of great stuff there, and if you haven't, then maybe you want to dash off to YouTube or Podbean or iTunes and avail yourself of the content on part 1 of episode 5 first. But if not, if you want to crack on from here, then delighted to have you along, and we're going to jump back into the story very shortly. Just to remind you to keep up with things Sporting Lives wise, you can follow me on Twitter on @SportingLives1 or on Facebook on @SportingLives1. The YouTube channel is Jonathan Doidge, Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge, as it is as well on Podbean and iTunes. So any of those or all of those, preferably, go along, hit subscribe, and you'll get the latest episode whenever it's released. So without further ado, let's jump right back in then to our studio in Leeds, where this was filmed. And well, Brian had just been talking to us about his Leeds United colleagues, the likes of Carlton Palmer, going off and training at Sheffield. But what about what came next in his stellar career? So pressing on, Brian, because we've got a few more clubs to get through here because of that list. I've got them all here. So let's go. We went back to Sheffield United. We mentioned that. Benfica, yep. Middlesbrough, Leicester, West Ham, back to Leeds, Sunderland, Perth, and then the last couple of games at Sheffield United. I don't want to disrespect your career by going through that so quickly. But time-wise and all the rest of it. But can we talk about Benfica? Because you know what a club with the history that place has got, and anybody of our generation certainly would think Benfica, and there's one word: Eusebio.
Yeah, I mean, I did this when I left Leeds. I had an opportunity to go to play in Holland for Feyenoord, but there was just something that wasn't right, and you know, it's to do with agents, you know, and I've got my own opinion of how some of them can operate, but yeah, it just didn't seem right. And then Sheffield United came back in for me, and the thing was, I didn't really think that I wanted to go and play it back in a division below, but then I spoke to them about what they had planned. They were serious about wanting to get promoted. It was a time when clubs were floated on the stock exchange. And then Paul Merson went and joined Middlesbrough. So I kind of thought, well, you know what, maybe it's not such a bad thing. But if you got such an established player already like Paul Merson who's going to go there. And so I went, you know, and we had a fantastic team. By Christmas, we were kind of nicely tucked behind the leaders. I think it was Middlesbrough who were the leaders, but we had a game in hand and we were point behind them or something, and the team was, you know, very strong. And then it all kind of unravelled with the owners of Sheffield United, and you know, I've got my own opinions on what happened, and you'll have to wait for the book. You know, the book isn't going to come for a while because I'm still in the middle of some chapters perhaps that I want to put in, and I don't want to. But that, in my own terms, was a real weird situation because we would have got promoted with that squad, but suddenly I got a. First of all, my contract at the time. What had happened was I'd been offered a contract, and I had a good contract, and it was only for 1 year. And I think that was the reason why the club wanted to get rid of me, because they could see that if I was available on a free. But I had such a good relationship with the club that I said, listen, if it looks like we're going up, I will go. Sorry, no, I wouldn't go. I'd sign an extension because I wanted to stay at the club. But the owners had different ideas, and they presented me with the opportunity to go to Portugal, and they made it quite clear that, you know, they had different plans. So it's very famous in Sheffield that they sold myself and Jan Fjortoft all the goals in the same season. and it was like, wow,
Head scratcher.
head scratching, So I didn't even know that Jan was going. So that's how bad it was, They kind of sold us both. It was like it was a fire sale, and the thing is, they still got to the cup semi-final. To the playoff final. You had players in the squad. If I go through the squad at the time, it was Paul McGrath, Carl Tyler. Who was at the back? Paul McGrath, Carl Tyler, Deane Oldsworth, Dave Oldsworth, not Deane. The fullbacks, Vas Babokis, who was a Greek international, very good player. Wayne Quinn, who went on to play for Newcastle. He had Don Hutchinson in the midfield. Dane Whitehouse, and one other. Can't remember who that was off the top of my head. It might be Matt Patterson, and then myself and Jan up front. Gareth Taylor, who came in as well, and it was a very, very strong team. So it was weird when that happened, but anyway, I went to Portugal. I'd always kind of fancied going abroad, and this was. I don't think I was realising what I was letting myself in for with the size of the club. I'd heard about Benfica, but I had no idea. And then I went and we agreed terms in the president's office, and then we went to the club, and I went to this stadium. It was like a coliseum, and it's like 110,000 people in this stadium. I'm like, oh. If you have a bad first game, you're in trouble in front of that many people.
Is this one of these places where, Brian Deane goes to the toilet, sort of gets reported? It's that much of a focus?
Yeah, look, Benfica at the time had 9 million supporters worldwide. And I remember we used to go to games and we'd have more fans than the home team at games, yeah. So there was a serious level of pressure to play for Benfica, and we had some fantastic players. Michel Prudhomme was the goalkeeper. We had Carlos Gamara, who played for Paraguay in the World Cup. Joao Pinto, Nuno Gomez was my partner up front. Karol Poborski, who had had left Manchester United. Paulo Madeira was a centre back. Amaral, who was Brazilian international. So a serious team of players, and it was just the biggest team. It was like the transition club for all the big, as it is today, for all the big South American players. So it was, and the thing was with those games was you could be, typically every game you had at home, the teams would set off quite deep, and they'd be hard to break down. They'd let you have the ball in your own half because they didn't want to stretch, and you could play between them. And for me, it was it was a different type of football. There was all the possession, and you found yourself quite easy to mark at times because the defenders just thought, right, they put man to man on you wherever you went, and I think we got better at that in terms of rotation and so on. But it was very, very hard to break down. But we had a centre forward called Nuno Gomez, who I played up front with, and Nuno's probably second in Portugal's history or third, and he was a great centre forward to play with because he would usually make the breakthrough, and then teams would have to open up. We had a good partnership, myself and Nuno, and then it allowed me to do what I did as well.
One thing that occurs to me that we've not explored with any of these teams that you've played in, but really does ring true with some club like Benfica, with that reputation, with those great players that you were playing alongside, is sort of within the squad. Is there an ecosystem? Is there a hierarchy? Are players trying to get one up on each other? Is there a lot of internal competition, or is it quite a supportive feel to a club like that?
No, it was quite supportive because the thing was, playing for Benfica is that the problem we had was it was us, and if we didn't perform, the white handkerchiefs would come out after 25 minutes. So we knew we had to get results from the resources that we had. So it was a fantastic and fascinating experience for me, and obviously scoring in that stadium, becoming a fan favourite, all of those kind of things was, a real highlight for me.
And imagine quite a sort of lonely experience in some ways as well, when the games and training's not on and you've got to go back to the four walls of your hotel room or whatever you were staying.
Yeah, it was really tough living in Estoril and Qashqai, really tough. I mean, 22 degrees in sort of like January, February. I mean, how did I cope, eh?
Yeah. By the way, we got a question for you from Colleen Linsell, hope I've pronounced that right, who asks how it felt to be the first goal scorer in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, again, I answer this all the time, but the truth is, at the time, I was just happy to score on the first day, because back in those days, the centre forwards were the ones who were supposed to score the goals, and if you scored, then it meant, I was like a 1 in 3 player all the way through my career, so goal every 3 games. So that meant that I had 2 or 3 games to get another goal, if you get what I mean. So if you start going 4 and 5 games without a goal, that's when, as a centre forward, your confidence starts to go. And nobody can tell me otherwise, because I've been there, I've seen it, I've scored over 200 goals, and I know the psyche that you have to have. So if you're not scoring goals, it does start affecting your confidence. So for me at the time, I was just relieved to start off getting a goal. And obviously, because it was against Manchester United, it was fantastic. I ended up scoring 2 that day. I got a penalty in the second half. We won 2-1. So I was on cloud 9. It was great feeling. And it was the beginning of a new era in terms of, football and how it was going to be broadcast. So, for me, it was. It didn't really actually kind of hit home the significance, and I'll always say this until perhaps I finish playing and people start saying, oh, well, yeah, you scored, it's a quiz question and this, and I'm like, wow, yeah, that's me. And it's a bit of a gift and a curse in some respects, because I'm always going to be remembered for that. It's, I have to protect my legacy as much as I can. For myself and for my kids and so on. So, it's something that's going to carry me, and I feel like a bit of an ambassador, really.
You can give Colleen a quick wave on the camera behind us.
She's watching.
She will be eventually. So, as I say, I don't want to disrespect your career, but you have gone through all your clubs in other podcasts. I know that, and that's out there. So, don't want to cover too much in the way of old ground. There's just a few other things I'd like to ask you before we finish. Sure. But your 50th party, by the way, it looked an absolutely stonking.
Party, yeah,
your 50th party looked a brilliant event. If listen, folks, if you get a chance to search for Brian on YouTube, it'll bring up all the goals, the Premier League first goal, all the rest of it. Quite a few interviews. But there also is Brian Deane's 50th party with some absolutely brilliant, funky music on there. Give it a watch. 2 or 3 minutes of your life.
Oh man, I mean, look, it was one of those special moments for me, because there was the tribute game to Cyril Regis. So West Brom had played Southampton, and my partner had said, "Oh, we have a wedding reception to go to," and I was like, usually I'm like, oh, jeez. Really, so, and she kept reminding me of this place that we had to go, and I was like, okay, so we went down to watch the game, West Brom against Southampton, and I thought, right, I got to get back, and I was with Rod Wallace and Chris Fairclough, and I says, right guys, listen, I need to go because I got to get back for this wedding reception. We'll catch up soon, guys. Love you like cooked food, as we used to say. And anyway, so I'm going home, and then I decide, right, I'm going straight to this venue. So gets to the engine shed in Wetherby, and I'm like, oh, that's Danny Bailey's car. What's that doing here? Anyway, I go in there, and my missus comes, and she goes, oh, Brian, I've come to get you. So I was like, what's going on? I get in there and there's silence. I look round and there's like all these people in afros, and I'm like, who are these people?
But it looks fantastic. And
it was brilliant.
You did. I watched being a fan of sort of soul music. I've watched Soul Train, all the stuff on YouTube on there, and the Soul Train dancing line, and it looked like that. You had that thing going on.
Oh man, it was great. We had the old Soul Train, like you say, the Soul Train line, and you're dancing to all the Brothers Johnson, Storm, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tom Brown, Funkin' for Jamaica. I mean, and this is my era for music. I'm a little bit of an oldie in that I used to love all the 70s and 80s disco. I still love it. It's what takes me to my happy place, and it reminds me a lot of what we've talked about really, which was growing up, and much like yourself really, growing up and happy times where, people were happy. People didn't have as much as they have now, but people were happier.
I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do a completely separate podcast on Brian's taste in music, and we'll go through all that chapter and verse because I'm right there with him. Earth, Wind and Fire. I've seen him a few times live. Great
fantastic stuff.
Okay, a couple of other questions about you, the man, if you like, you as a player. What got to you as a player, whether that be on the field or off the field? Is there anything that really sort of ever got under your skin, and if so, was that just as a footballer, or is it you as a person? Is it
what got to me? No, I mean, I always used to like to prepare properly, and whether you're playing Spurs, Man United, Arsenal, whoever, you always used to know who you were. Everybody knows they're all household names, so I always used to try and prepare accordingly. And some opponents were more difficult than others. Some I felt very comfortable with. One thing I didn't like was when people started to foul me, because I used to say, there was one kid ended up being a teammate at one club, but I remember we played in one game, and I remember this ball coming into me, and I felt somebody whack me on my calves, and I was like, shh. And I said, listen, I said, what's all that about? He says, well, just the game. I said, listen, that's where you want to go. Let's go. And half time, substitutes, new defender playing against me. So I never used to like being overly physical, but I could take care of myself, and I think that came off the back of I remember when I was at Leeds, and we played against Newcastle one time, and it was a lot different in those days, and Howard came into the changing rooms, and I remember we played Newcastle, and I'd had a poor game. We played Newcastle up there, and Steve Howie had played really well against me, and Howard came in, and he said, as he used to do, you go around every player, and then he says, he gets an England cap off that. And I thought, no one's doing that again. No one is going to make their reputation on me again. Simple. I don't care who you are. You're going to know that you've been in a game.
You're up against, yeah. Were you quite a self-contained player? Did you need... Were you, for example, a player who, in that classic fashion, needed an arm around his shoulder from the manager, or we should just get on with the job?
Listen, you never got an arm around your shoulder in them days. You were either, to quote what Brian Clough once said to a player, he just bought this player, and he went, son, have you bought a house in the Nottingham area? And the player said no. He says, well, I wouldn't bother. And that was after one game. So that's the era that we grew up in, and it was like, you had to be resilient. And no, listen, but that resilience is built up. So, I of course, if you're not scoring goals, and Dave Bassett was very good at it, he would turn around and say, listen, Brian, you'll always be able to score goals. You're just not getting the rubber to green. Keep getting into the same areas. It'll work out for you. So that was what I would call an arm around the shoulder. You can shout at somebody for so long and it just loses its effect. And I've had managers who did that as well. It's about, management. Man management is one of the most important things. getting your players onto the pitch and getting them to feel like they have nothing on their shoulders and that the manager believes in them is the best thing you can do. And yeah, I might have only had 2 years in management, but that's what I did. That's how I used the experiences that I had to get the best out of the players that I had.
70 games in charge at Sarpsborg. Yeah. It sounded like quite a nice little lifestyle up there in the southeast of Norway as well. And there were successes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got the job. They just got promoted to the top division. I got the job. I'd been told, look, this is how we want to play. We've got the smallest budget in the league, and we want to be more professional. And I think my brief basically was to bring my experiences and try and establish the club in the division. And I'm proud to say that since I was there, those 2 years, we managed to stay up in the first year. And in the second year, we finished 8th and got to the semi-final of the cup. Lost to was it Molde in the semi-final. So we didn't do bad in those 2 years, but I still get people saying that it was a great time for the club and they saw the transition from a kind of amateur club to now where they played in the Europa Cup 2-3 years ago. So yeah, it's wonderful time there.
Which prompts the next question really. As I said earlier on, you certainly come over as a bright lad. You've got all your chairs at home in terms of your knowledge of football and all that experience you've got on the field. You've 70 games in charge in Norway, but as far as I'm aware, not a sniff in this country of having charge of a football team.
Look, people can make out what they want. I mean, for me, I would have just liked a chance to get in the room and speak to people. I'm a player who has played abroad for one of the biggest clubs in Europe. I have experiences from that. I've played for some of the biggest teams. I played for Leeds when we finished, in the top 5 in the Premier League for 2 years. Sheffield United, played for England, played for West Ham, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Leicester, went down, come back up. And I've got experiences, or rather I had experiences from all those situations. Played for different managers, played under George Graham, learned a lot from him, played under Alan Pardew, learned a lot from him, Howard, Dave Bassett, Terry Venables, Graham Souness. That's what I was bringing in. That's what I took to Sarpsborg. I took all of those experiences of playing under those players into that club and manage that club in a way that I knew that I would have the advantages, because nobody had those experiences. And I knew, for example, when we went for a period in the first year I was there where we lost 6 in a row. And but I never failed believing in what we're doing. And over there, what happens is before you get off the pitch, there's a camera in your face and a microphone, and if they could have seen, or the players could have seen that I was gone, they'd have all folded as well, or they'd have said, no, get him out. And I never lost faith in my team. And funnily enough, it was like the time when I was at Sheffield United and we had 4 points at Christmas, and I knew that we just needed a win. We just needed something to turn us around, because the players won't want to go there again. And that's exactly what happened, and we finished the season very strongly.
It
never happened.
It defies logic, doesn't it, really?
It nenever happened. Look, there are people out there who will turn around and say, and say, well, I've had it, and you know what? I'm sick of. I've sat in every chair. You're right. I've sat in every chair out there, and I can say what I want because I've been there. And if I say that I can't get an interview or whatever, I can't get an interview. I'm not going to lie, but I would say this. I might have got an interview, but there might have been better people for the job. It doesn't bother me. You have to be able to prepare for that situation. And if you can't even prepare for that situation, then it's not fair. It's not a fair race. And the thing for me now is I'm not, I'm past wanting to go into management. I think it's also prudent to mention that management is very tough. Managers take a lot of stick. Everybody's talking about everybody can do better. It ain't that easy, because there were times where I was managing a club with a capacity of 6,000 in the top division in Norway, when I wasn't going to sleep till 2-3 in the morning because I was wondering about decisions I was going to have to make as a manager, how I was going to have to drop him and explain to him why he's not in the team and so on, what tactics we were going to have. We were going to play a 6-3, 3-6-1, we were going to play 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. Why? Why am I playing him there? And I'm answerable to my sports board. So you're selling yourself all the time. So yes, I do know what I'm talking about, but I'm quite happy that, I don't have to think too much. But one of the things I came back with, and I mentioned this because when I came back, I said, look, I didn't get on with the sporting director, and that was just a clash of personalities. But when I came back, I respect the fact that this is a post that you can't really ignore, because there needs to be a real strong communication thread between the owners and the coaches, and that's got to be a supportive role. Unfortunately for me, I saw a lot of what is bad about the role because I was forever having to manage above and somebody on the side and somebody who wanted to bring his mates in and so on. So I was getting all kinds of things thrown at me, but you get through it, and I'd like to say in life I'm better for that experience.
So just one more footballing thing really, and that is Kosovo. Ferizaj?
Ferizaj. So yeah, that's an interesting.
How did that come about?
Ferizaj. The truth is that in terms of being over in Kosovo, I've got a friend who I've known for 7-8 years now, very close friend of mine now, Francesco, and he's been for years saying to me, Brian, you need to come over to my country, come over. And, I'm like, I'm not sure about that, because, and he's like, listen, we love you, we love the English, you guys, we have Tony Blair Street and Bill Clinton this, and I'm like, look how far, and then I got to find out a little bit about the background and, what had happened and, the fight between Serbia and Kosovo and the intervention of of NATO and all of these kind of things. And I went over there and I found it very interesting. And I also found that I've not in all my time over there I've not had any form of racism, none whatsoever. I don't know if it's, I can't say if I went to one of the other countries surrounding it, whether it'd be the same, but I do know in Kosovo, it's, the population, the average age of the population is it's under 30, for reasons you can probably work out for yourself. But the people are so friendly, they're eager to, to accelerate their economic development. They want, like everybody else. And the reason why I went over there was because of some opportunities away from football. But while I was there, I actually met the people from the FA, including Fadil Vokri, who unfortunately passed away. But the main stadium is named after him now. So I have some friends from that point of view, and I got involved with the club. But it's more of a role in that it's for the strategic development of the club. But like anything, people want to do things their own way. So, at the moment, I'm not sure how that one's going to end. But, there are some interesting ideas. It's a place where you can pick up, very good youngsters. There's a little bit of underdevelopment, so there's a lot of potential in the younger players. If you look at it being part of the former Yugoslavia, which was the Brazil of Europe, when I was growing up, that's where all the best and the most skillful players came from. Look at Croatia. That's the kind of levels. If you can put the kind of infrastructure in place, where you're putting good, not only facilities, but also good training methods, then you could potentially, sky's the limit. You've seen what happened in the Euros as well.
Am I right in saying it's a 50% share?
It is 51, but like I said, at the moment, I'm not sure if that's going to stay the same. There are things happening, and in fairness, I'm based over here, and my partners are. But like I said, the reason why I went over there in the first place wasn't to get involved in football. But I think what happened was very quickly people recognised me and understood who I was, and asked me to get involved in a couple of projects over there, which has been interesting.
So, reading between lines, it sounds as though the football club future may change. My words there, not yours. But let's finish on the future. What do you see as Brian Deane's future?
Well, like I said, I'm at a point now where in my life there are some projects that interest me in and around football, but I certainly don't have the kind of energy that I did 10 years ago. I want to enjoy whatever I'm doing. I want to I'd prefer to be somebody who, people want the answers from, based on my experiences. So that's one of the things I'm involved in. The most important thing for me actually is the fact that we have a generation of footballers in my age group who have not really been properly looked after. When the Premier League money came in, there was a lot of exposure to a lot of unscrupulous people, and yes, is
that the A word? Agents.
Well, agents, advisors, and I've seen a lot of people who should have been looked after better and have been exposed to these kinds of people. And what we need in football is more financial education for the young players, a real understanding and the transparency of their career, not being exposed to people who are going to take what they need from each relationship. And you could, I throw it out there, I'm saying to people, and if any kids are listening out there, believe me, there are some people who are in that game who understand the journey. A lot of them are ex-players. Some of them are very good. Some of them understand what it's like for a player when he goes over the line. I would say stick with those kinds of people. Don't go for the people who are coming out of it a lot of the time, and they've been, I don't know, they could be selling anything, because believe me, that is what you are. You're an object to a lot of people like that. So I believe that what we should be looking at with these players, and I think we've been let down by certain areas, but I think what we should be looking at is, financial education for players, so that they can learn by the time they finish playing football, they understand and they learn about, for example, what's the best way to buy a car? Do I pay cash? Do I go HP? Do I take a lease? Whatever, basic understanding. Don't put that in other people's hands. Try and have your family around you if they're supportive. Look, every situation's different, but I can only speak from my experiences. There's times where I wish I'd have listened more to those people right close to me instead of thinking about other people. And like I said, I've seen some pretty horrific cases of how people have been treated, and then at the end of the career, the phone stops ringing. If you've got a boy who's straight out of the academies, and all of a sudden, he can't get a club, his phone stops ringing. These are the people you've got to be wary of, because they're obviously looking at you as a meal ticket. And it's never too early to think about becoming self-sufficient, and self-aware of what this career means. Understand money, understand what it means for you, for your family, for those around you. Keep a tight-knit unit of people around you. And if people want to come in, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm happy to speak to any parent about the effects of, not having the right advice. I'm not going to turn around here and say that I can give better advice than anybody else. I'm just saying, look, if I had my time again, there's a way of managing those situations and making sure that, your family, my brother once said to me, he said, listen, Brian, if you ever fall, who's going to be there to pick you up? Not all of these people. It's going to be me. It's going to be yours. And that's what kids need to remember, that when you're playing, you're not immortal. At some point you will be on your backside, and who's going to be around you? That's what you've got to remember. It's not because you can buy a Belstaff jacket or a Rolex watch now, or have a nice car outside. Remember, manage yourself properly, and you can have whatever you want for as long as you want.
Words of wisdom from the sage, Brian Deane, after a 20-year career. He might have lost a hair follicle or two since the days when we played a few games together, but he's certainly not lost his marbles, there's no question about that. Listen, Brian Deane, it's been a really enjoyable journey from Chapeltown to Sheffield United, Benfica, and via Norway as well. I thank you very, very much indeed for your time. A real pleasure for me to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again to Brian Deane. Fabulous to hear all about his career across that variety of clubs that he played for and all those footballing experiences. I thank him for his time, and I also thank the guys at ICS, Ian Holding and Julian Barnes, for the part they've played in helping me put this podcast together. Plenty more Sporting Lives to come. Do please follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Doidge or at Sporting Lives 1. You can also subscribe on both YouTube and Podbeans on Sporting Lives with Jonathan Doidge, or indeed head to our Facebook page and give us a like, and all the latest news and clips are on there as well, and that is at Sporting Lives 1. Thanks to you for listening once again. Hope you'll be back with us for the next episode of Sporting Lives.